Right gents, we're back. So I don't know if you've watched the previous video, but the previous video was basically changing the rear brake pads on the bike, and I've serviced the front brakes. I didn't film that, but now I'm going to go ahead and bleed the front and rear brakes on the bike. So I'm going to make another video. So in the last video I mentioned I'm about to do this basically. So first things first, just want to undo these two Phillips screws to expose the top reservoir. Just crack these off and then just pull the cap off. There'll be a or a plastic cover with a diaphragm underneath it. I'll show you that in a second. Right, so these are the two screws you're going to want to undo. I usually change the brake fluid roughly once every 2 years. Maybe just before the 2-year mark I'll go ahead and do that. So they're out. Just want to pop this top cover off. Lay that safely to one side. Then you want to take this top plastic cover off here. This will expose the diaphragm. And you just pull the diaphragm off. Like so. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to just put a rag around this area in case I spill some brake fluid. You ideally don't want to get it on the paint. It's not as corrosive as the old stuff used to be, but it can still eat into paintwork. So just put a rag around there like that. Pull this diaphragm off. I'm just going to reset that like so. Again, place this to one side. Now, there's the old brake fluid in there. What I'm going to do is just get this little turkey baster thing and suck the old fluid out, completely out of the reservoir, because there's no point filling this up to then flush the old stuff through. You might as well just suck all this old stuff out. And all I use for this is a little thing with an end on. Just put it in an old container. Right, so that's empty. You can see there I've got most of that out in there. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to fill this up with some fresh fluid. I'm just using the Castrol .4 brake fluid, but any old .4 brake fluid will do. I'm just going to fill this up with fresh stuff as high as I can get it without it spilling over the top. There we go. And now we can start the bleeding process. Always put the cap back on this brake fluid, the new stuff, straight away, because this does absorb water. And that's the reason why we're changing it. So, I'm going to come down here. I'm going to put my speed bleed on this caliper here, crack it off, and then we can start bleeding out the system. Now, with a full reservoir, what I've done is fitted, you can get these on the internet, it's called like a solo bleed. Yeah, solo bleed is called, by Oxford. They're really good for when you're doing bleeding the brakes yourself. Basically, in this section here, it just has a one-way valve. It tells you what way the flow is going to go, or should go. So you basically fit this side first, the smaller pipe. So yeah, you fit this on there, you crack off the bleed screw, and when pumping the brake, it goes all the way down here into a one-way valve, so it stops the fluid ever coming back up and bringing up potential air with it. So all I'll do is, look, I'll just crack that off, and then I'll sort of like hold that as I'm pumping the brakes. It's just pumping the fluid out. So much easier. Because otherwise you're reaching over the bike doing this. So what you with a normal piece of tubing you'd do, you'd have this end suspended in old brake fluid. You'd pump up the brake. Whilst holding pressure, you just back this off. And then put it back down and then release the brake. Pump it up. Pressure. Release it. Back it off and then release the brake pedal, the brake lever rather. So that's it really. So what I'll do is I'll just keep bleeding this out, making sure you never run dry at the top of the reservoir. If this was to run dry at the top here, you're just going to introduce air at the top of the system and you're going to then have to bleed this whole lot out. It's a nightmare as well with ABS bikes because there's a lot going on in the pump. To bleed out of the pump can be a bit of a nightmare, so you want to, it's imperative you make sure that this never runs dry. But just buy one of these solo bleeders. I usually keep bleeding it out until I see the old fluid, it'll be darker and you'll see the new fluid get pushed through and then it's nice and clear. It usually takes about 6 top-ups of the reservoir roughly, I find, to make sure that it's properly bled through. But you can just do as much as you really want, as long as it's running clear the other end, and there's loads of it. So a litre of this will do plenty of flushes. To be honest, once this is opened, it don't last that long anyway, so you want to try and flush as much through as possible on the bike, and then throw the rest of that away. To be honest, because by the time the next brake fluid's due, this will be well expired. You're gonna have to buy a new lot. So yeah, I'm just going to keep flushing this through, pumping it, letting it run clear. I'll do the other side and then we'll jump onto the rear brakes. But it's such a really easy job. Now once you're happy the brakes are all bled out and there's no air in the system, you'll see the rest of the air, or if there's any air, there shouldn't really be, run out of the pipe. And then once you've done that, what I'm going to do is put that diaphragm back in the top. I filled this up to the top of that sight glass, by the way. So you want to fill the level right at the very top of that. And then put the diaphragm back in, make sure everything's all clean, put the plastic cap back on, and then screw the metal cap back on. So put the rubber diaphragm back in. The old plastic cap on there. And then your metal cap. And then I'll just nip these down, don't go too tight with them. Perfect. Now what I'll do is clean all this old brake fluid off, clean it all off the calipers, ensure these bleed nipples are just nipped up tight. You want to clear all the old brake fluid off, obviously it can damage the paint. But what I'm going to do now is do the rear. So to get to the rear reservoir, you have to take this bit of plastic off. It's held on just by 2 bolts, one up there, one there, and there's a pop clip at the top. One of these little clips, you just push the middle in and it lifts out, and there's one at the bottom. So there's one at the top there and one at the bottom of the actual panel. So that goes. Oh, I'll show you when it's back on. I can't remember exactly where it went now, but it was at the bottom. Ah, went on there. And then that releases. Next thing to do is just get a Phillips and unscrew these two. Similar, exactly the same to the front brakes. I'm getting this reservoir off. I'm just using a little bit with a Phillips bit in there. You could just take it off here to give you access to then move this out of the way and crack it off. But I've got this tool to leave this on so it's nice and level still. That's all you'd have to do. If you didn't have a bit like this, take off that little 8mm bolt, crack it off, refix it back on. If you want this to be level, get the right fluid level after. Again, it's exactly the same. You don't have the plastic cover on this, but you have the diaphragm there. Pull that out. Set this to one side. Now you can see the old fluid, and this is not even 2 years old yet. It's gone quite a bit of a pissy colour, and it's a lot clearer than that, the new stuff. So again, what I'm going to do is get in there with my turkey baster, suck the old stuff out. Fill it up with fresh stuff. So you can see the colour of the new stuff. Just depends how hydrated you are, I suppose. It's exactly the same process on the rear, except for using the rear brake pedal to push the fluid out. So I'm going to hook up our easy bleed or solo bleed on the back of that nipple there and pump away with the rear brake lever there. Right, so I'm hooked up there, put a bit of pressure on the rear brake pedal, release, nip it up. And then once you've got all the air out of this line with this solo bleeder, you can just leave it off because it ain't going to draw air back because it's the one-way valve in here. And you can just pump away. And you can see, I don't know if you can, the camera pick this up, but it will start to run clear. Obviously keeping an eye on the rear reservoir. It's getting low, so I'm going to top that up. You will get a bit of seepage out of where the thread's backed off, where the bleed nipple is. You will just get a bit of seepage there, but that's fine. Beware that the rear reservoir runs out a lot quicker than the top, than the front rather. Perfect. Right, you can see in there it's nice and clear. I've filled the fluid up to the upper level there, the little line, because I've got rear brake pads as you see on the previous video. So I'm going to put it right on the upper line because your brake fluid level can dictate how much the brake pads have worn. Obviously the more the pads wear, the more they're closing up, the more that piston in that caliper's coming out. Therefore the fluid's got to go somewhere. It's going in the caliper and it's coming from here. So because I've got brand new pads, I've put it right on the upper level. Obviously the front I've put on the upper level. They were pretty good, the pads, to be honest. But if they were thin, you'd probably want to put it just a little bit under that maximum. But it's best to just visually check the pads anyway now and again. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to put that rubber diaphragm in and put the top cap back on. Right, and that's it. It's all back together. Put this little side panel on, 2 bolts, 2 pop clips, and it's back on. I'm just going to wheel it outside and just clean all this old brake fluid off. And that's it really. It's really easy brake fluid changes, providing you don't ever let that run dry when bleeding it out, because it makes your life a lot more harder. But yeah, happy days. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Cheers.